Hey guys, Matt and Nicky here. So, little baseline video. We got a 2020 ZL1 that a good customer of ours just picked up. Car's got about 150 miles on it, and he's in for some work. So we're gonna do our stage 1 ZL1 package, this one. Headers, so we're doing our 2-inch headers. We're doing a American Racing, our Nickey Edition American Racing 2-inch headers. 3-inch X pipe. We're leaving the stock muffler on it. So he wants to retain the dual mode, keep the stock muffler, so that American Racing's an intermediate system that actually I take it back. It's their long system. It goes all the way under the axle, under the rear end to the muffler, and basically interface it right to the stock muffler. So you still retain the function of the stock muffler and the stock tips and stuff. So we are going to take the supercharger snout off, and I'm going to port it and port the inside of it and fit a 103 millimeter throttle body. So I'll port match the inlet of the snout to fit the larger throttle body. We're going to do a Roto-Fab big gulp 5-inch cold air. We'll do a 160 thermostat, and that's basically it. And that's basically our stage 1 package for these ZL1s, and that's, these cars are mid-11 second cars stock. This guy's going to drag race his car, so we got a set of wheels for him, and these cars are mid-11 stock. We've proven that many times, and with that package on pump gas, these cars are mid-10s, and on race gas in good DA, where you're a low 10 to even maybe a high 9 depending on the air. With just those simple bolt-ons, and we've proven that several times with these things. So yeah. So I'm gonna set the camera down and kind of do a little bit of a walk around quick. This is the first time I've actually seen one in this color, and I'm not exactly sure what this color is called. I probably should know that, but nice looking car. So yeah, I'll set the camera down and we'll see what this thing puts out baseline. All right, guys, that's the first one. I always like doing 2 baselines just to kind of establish just an average. Pretty nice looking curve. So let's hop in the car and do one more and see if we can back that up. So of course got my data logger going. I was, again, even on baselines, I like to make sure that I'm at temperature. So, you can see from the factory, they run a pretty decent amount of timing, 23 degrees. Looks like about 9. Well, just looking at boost here. Do a quick calculation. Yep, 9 pounds. Yep, that's right that's right factory. So you can see up here that white line at the top. That's in KPA. That's the way, when you get into the tuning world, that's kind of the way that everything is looked at as KPA on these modern boosted cars. So I always read KPA. You just got to you got to 100K or 98 KPA is what we're at atmospheric. So that's this is absolute pressure. So that the atmospheric pressure is included in that reading. So you got to subtract off 98. So, and Yeah, you can see this knock retard that you see here. It's actually factory. They have what's called static retard. So the LT4s, GM pulls timing from a couple cylinders individually, and that shows up on the knock as knock on the scanner here. So yeah, that's what you're seeing there. So, but I'm not seeing any other knock spikes. So yeah, I didn't do an air fuel because these run pretty rich from the factory. I've done that many times. Look at this other graph. Almost identical. Obviously, you know, it gets a little hotter. Do it back to back and stuff. The blower starts to heat up a little bit. But yeah, that's the baseline. So that's a 2020 ZL1, and that's where we're starting. The car's got, like I said, it's got about 150 miles on it, and so now obviously we're gonna get it. We're gonna go into surgery with it, take some parts off, reinstall some go fast bits, and we'll see where we end up. So stay tuned. All right, guys, get those fans shut off so we can talk. So that last pull there, I think that's going to be my final for this thing. 652, 670 torque. So, a couple things about this car and some of the other 2020 ZL1s that we're finding. I use HP tuners, obviously, for tuning, and the 2020 10 speeds Camaro SS and ZL1 is a new transmission controller. So I'm unable to do anything. HP Tuners has no support for that transmission controller yet. So I cannot do any trans torque, undo trans torque limits, which is a normal thing we do, where I'm going into the TCM and I'm up in the torque limits on the transmission. So you can see here, I'm actually, it's the transmission, the predicted engine torque is being limited by transmission. So the transmission and engine, the transmission computer, the engine computer, the body controller, or the chassis control, body control, all the modules in the car run on a network. They're all linked together in a chain, and they all talk to each other. So engine and transmission, there's a lot of information going back and forth between the transmission and the engine controllers. And we pump up the power, and we just added 80 horsepower to this car, and obviously the ECU sees the added boost. We added a smidge of boost and the added airflow, and everything gets upped, and the added torque, and the engine controller does use torque to control everything on these cars, and that is then sent to the TCM, the transmission controller, and the TCM says, hey, that's too much torque, and tells the engine controller to back the throttle down. So until we can go into the transmission controller and say, this much torque is okay, it's okay to let it open up, basically this is what we're stuck with on the 2020s. And it's obviously, as the 20s, more and more people have 2020s, but we have no answer from HP Tuners yet on this, and it's getting a little frustrating, but we'll just have to work through it. So going back over this car, from the baseline I did weeks ago, earlier in the video, basically this is our stage 1 package for a 6th gen ZL1, and so that consists of headers. We do 2-inch primary, our American Racing 2-inch primary headers. This customer opted to do the full exhaust system. That's not necessarily part of a stage 1 package, but it's an option. The headers are part of the stage 1 option, headers and an X pipe. We do the 5-inch Roto-Fab big gulp cold air. We do a throttle body. That's kind of an option for our stage 1. Port the snout. Those two are kind of an option, but that's an option for our stage 1 package, obviously. Basically, the stage 1 is external stuff, external bolt-ons. So anything external, we call a stage 1. So cold air intake, 5-inch, 103 millimeter throttle body with the snout ported to match. Headers. I do a catch can on these, so we use Tracy Lewis catch cans. He has this really sweet, for the LT4s, he's got this really nice insert where you pull out on the valley plate, there's a plug that you can actually pull out, and it's part of the PCV system and the crankcase ventilation system, and you can pull that out, and he has an insert that you replace it with that has a barb on it that you can hook the catch can in. So then you can hook the catch can in line to the valley tray where a lot of the engine crankcase vapors are being expelled. And instead of going up into the bottom of the snout of the inlet of the supercharger and dumping all that oil vapor and oil in there, we're bypassing that and we're catching it in the catch can, and that's a pretty sweet setup. And then we just, after it goes through the catch can, then I put it back into the top of the snout. Obviously, the 6th gens do have somewhat of a breather catch system here, but that's where a lot of the oil comes from, is that valley pan, so we want to catch those vapors. 160 degree thermostat, obviously, keep these things cool. And that's pretty much it. So it's just all external stuff. And and again, normally on the 17 to 19 cars, we would do either a 15 or 17% overdriven lower pulley. We usually don't touch the upper pulleys. I know a lot of guys, the upper pulley is an option, and we can certainly do that. Most of the time, we're just going to an A-type balancer. It's a little more money, but it, in the end, it doesn't actually end up being a whole lot more money. And I like the idea of just doing something on a balancer. And the ATI balancers are so nice, and they help engine vibrations and protect the engine from adding horsepower. And a lot of these guys, we kind of future-proof them for further builds. So we always go to the lower balancer first to add boost on the LT4s. And if the customer wanted us to, we could certainly do an upper pulley also. But by the time you buy a pulley and a hub and press the pulley off, pull it off, press a new one on, we're already into it it's just a smidge more money for a balancer and a lower ring. So this car, going back to the 2020 deal with the TCM, I only have a 5% lower balancer supercharger pulley on it. So stock's 8-inch. This is an 8.4-inch. So the boost really isn't much over stock. I'm only seeing about a pound and a half over stock. So, and again, because it's 2020, the transmission module is intervening with limiting torque and trying to close the throttle down and stuff. That's why we didn't go up to like a 915 or a 917 or 9.2-inch lower ring like would normally do on a bolt-on stage 1 setup like this. So yeah. Otherwise, actually, before we take a look at the data log, we got dynographs up here. We'll go back to the baseline again. This is the most important thing. So that was the baseline of the car. That's where it came in, bone stock, and I did a couple pulls baseline. I did a 6th and a 7th gear pull. These were both 7th gear. So when I did the baseline, I did some 6th gear runs that were 550-ish, and my last pull, I like doing sometimes. I shouldn't say I like doing 7th. Sometimes I like to do 7th. This car is going to get raced and it's going to get loaded at the track, and the 7th gear really loads the motor and loads the supercharger, and I get to see what kind of IATs and stuff like that with a really long dyno pull and holding the engine under load for a little bit longer. So that's why I did a baseline in 6th and 7th, because I figured maybe my end result was going to be a 6th gear or a 7th gear pull. So these are both 7th gear pulls. So this is the stock 7th gear, and this is what we just did, that one I just did. So yeah, we picked up 82 horsepower and looks like 77 foot-pounds of torque. So that's going to be a 10-second car. And this guy's going to drag race it, and until we, again, once we get the transmission tuning we can go back to a 9.1. I'll probably put a 917 lower pulley on it, and power will jump up, you know, maybe 20. Torque will jump up. The power is honestly not a whole lot more when we go up to a 917 and up the boost, you know, another pound and a half. But the torque is huge. We can get the torque 730 foot-pounds at the wheels way down low with the smaller pull or the bigger lower ring, even from where we are now. So, and that really helps moving a 4,000 pound car at the drag strip. So, 60 foots can be in the 1.4s with basically a stock weight ZL1. So, helps motivate them. And data log. Air fuel. For some reason my wideband glitched here. I don't know what happened, but this is where I was happy. It's a little rich for a DI motor, but that's where this particular car and setup was happy. I leaned it out a little more to 0.83, 0.84, and I was getting more knock. So this car was happy being a smidge richer most of the time, LT motors. And I did pull a little bit of timing out of here. I pulled a degree right out at 5600 at that 1.45, 1.44 cell in the timing table. I just pulled that out. I was going to load that in, but you can see here's what I was talking about with the throttle. You can see here, this is, it's pulling the throttle, and you can see here predicted engine torque source right there where it says trans. So the transmission is limiting my predicted engine torque, which predicted engine torque is on these DI controllers is throttle. So and you can even see here right when I punched it, that its immediate engine torque source is spark. So that's trans S, so that's usually either torque converter locking up, or it'll also show that when the trans shifts. So here you can tell it was limiting torque on the torque converter here. So this is on the dyno. So right as I punched it, it pulled a bunch of timing down because of the immediate torque source, trans, and once it came through that, then it started pulling throttle. So, and I can play with the virtual torque tables, but we're not really seeing a whole lot more air mass over stock, and I really don't want to pull reported torque to the trans out of the system, because that's what the transmission uses for line pressure and shift firmness. And so you start artificially pulling reported torque out, so basically telling the ECU and the TCU that the engine's making less torque. Well, then it drops the pressures down, it drops the shift firmness down, and without being able to go into the trans controller and manipulating that stuff, we don't want to mess stuff up. So for now, this is the way this is going to be. I'm going to go get it on the street and make sure that everything is good street-wise, and we're probably going to take this thing to the drag strip this weekend and bring the customer along. And he's been drag racing for a long time, so let him do a couple shakedown passes in it and see where we end up. But probably should see some 10-second time slips with it. So yeah, there's our gain again. And again, that's baseline to where we are at now. So that's really what I want to see is the gain. That's what we're using this dyno for. So yeah, that'll pretty much wrap it up for this car, guys. It's basically our stage 1 package on a 6th-gen ZL1. So thanks for watching, and check back for more videos in the future.